Welcome, and settle in with me for a quiet shift inside a tall, breathing tower of a vertical farm where the light is an even, comforting pink and the air is threaded with the soft music of millions of droplets. As you arrive, imagine the outside world falling away, as if your worries hang gently on a peg by the door with your coat, and you step forward into calm, into a place that hums softly and never hurries. If this gentle journey helps you relax, please tap like and subscribe. And if you want the calm to continue on its own, you can use the playlist link in the description so another quiet story flows in as you drift. What city/country are you watching from right now? You find yourself in the airlock, surrounded by smooth, pale walls. A hush of filtered air glides over your skin. The doorway is a soft rectangle of muted glow, and your footsteps land on a forgiving, cushioned mat that catches the particles from your shoes. You pull on a clean coat, a cap that gathers stray hair, and soft gloves that hug your hands without squeezing. There is no rush. The tower waits for you the way a lake waits for a dawn breeze. The pink light is constant and even, like a held chord on a distant instrument, the color of a calm sunset layered over petals, quiet and content to stay. You inhale and notice a fluent scent, a green breath of leaves, an almost minty coolness from basil, a hint of cucumber from lettuce, and the mild mineral note of water that has been carefully balanced and tended. The temperature is steady, the humidity is gentle and present, not heavy, more like the feeling of a warm fog that keeps your skin dewy and your lungs at ease. Beyond the clean door, rows and columns rise in graceful stacks, shelves holding life in tidy lines. Imagine yourself moving down a central aisle, and the floor under your feet is level and faintly springy. On both sides, plants reach toward the light, not straining, simply existing in a peaceful rhythm. Lettuces curl and ruffle with a matte sheen, thick leaves cupping pockets of coolness. Basil lifts soft, oval leaves like layered spoons. Mizuna and kale create lacy mosaics, tender and delicate. Microgreens form a quiet carpet, a soft crowd of tiny stems and leaves that look like a choir of small voices in a whispery song. The rows climb upward, level after level, a vertical city of plants under the steady sky of pink. And in the air, a sound like a gentle rain that never quite arrives. Droplets forming, droplets falling, droplets turning into threads that glide along smooth surfaces and slip back into hidden channels. The light that washes this vertical world is not the loud light of a midday sun. It is tempered, chosen, tuned, so the leaves can sip photons at a steady pace. You look up at the panels, arrays of tiny points spaced with care. Most glow in tones that our eyes sense as red, some in cool blue, and together they lay down the pink that fills the room. Imagine yourself seeing with the plant's sense of light, not as color, but as streams of little packets, arriving in a soft, reliable drizzle that carries energy. The leaves receive this drizzle in cells shaped like honeycombs, with green pigments folded into membranes, a quiet architecture built from repetition. Here, the red tones carry a lot of importance, guiding a calm engine inside the plant. The blue tones help set the plant's living clock, asking it to stay compact, to focus on sturdy leaves, to unfold in a measured way. Sometimes, a subtle tone beyond red whispers about stretching toward light that skims the horizon, and the response is mild and balanced. For humans in the tower, a few white notes are added to the chorus, so your eyes and your sense of time can stay easy. The panels stay cool because they are good at turning electricity into light rather than heat, helped by quiet metal veins that draw warmth away in a patient flow. A faint fan somewhere in the panel's size, in a constant thread, barely there. You stop by a small station where the nutrient mix is prepared. The tanks are rounded and calm, their surfaces reflecting the pink glow, as if a garden had become liquid and settled in. Inside the water, there is order a plant can drink. Dissolved are gentle amounts of nitrogen that leaves can shape into cells and enzymes. Potassium that helps gates open and close in tiny pores. Calcium that gives structure to walls. Magnesium that holds the green heart of each photosynthetic pigment like a silver pin in a museum. There is iron, provided in a form that stays available, a caring hand keeping it from falling out of solution. Trace companions like manganese and zinc are there too, in small, necessary whispers. Together, they form a balanced, quiet meal that never overwhelms, never shocks, a steady tea that roots can sip when they wish, guided by signals and flows. Pipes rise like quiet tree trunks and then branch into thinner lines that move behind panels and along shelves. The water moves in loops, always returning, always filtered, always cleaned. A river inside the tower that never erodes and never floods. Pumps hum softly, each one a heartbeat in rubber and metal. The sound is comforting and repetitive, steady as breath. You watch a manifold of clear tubing as the droplets inside jump and run, pushed gently by the pump's patient pulse. Where the tubes become nozzles, droplets appear from nothing, balanced between water and air for a moment, then released into mist. In the upper racks, in a space not quite open and not quite closed, roots hang like pale tassels, touched by a cool cloud every few seconds. The droplets are small enough to float for a heartbeat and large enough to land on the roots without vanishing in the air. The roots taste the water and take what they would like, and the rest flows back, collected by gutters that slope by a quiet fraction, a gradient so mild that you feel you could walk it in your sleep and never trip. Along the lower levels, a different rhythm plays. A thin, laminar film pours past roots nestled in channels. The gentlest stream, a barely moving sheet that coats everything it touches. The surface tension holds the water in a soft blanket, and the roots spread like fingers beneath it. In another part of the tower, drip emitters take turns, each one letting go of droplets that form, elongate, and then descend. Each droplet is a clear bead of a story, reflecting the pink light in a tiny iris. As it releases, the droplet falls through the air that is neither dry nor wet, and it meets a leaf or a channel with a tap so soft it feels like thought. The droplets swarm the air with a hush, like a million soft yeses happening all around you, every minute through your entire shift. The gentle rhythm continues. You move slowly along the aisle, checking valves, listening with the side of your attention rather than the front of it. Here, a damper breathes. There, a fan turns at a stately pace, pulling air past leaves and then onward through a filter that sits like a guardian in the path. The fan's blades run clean, and the pulses of air draw a thin boundary layer away from the leaf surface, keeping the microclimate around each plant fresh and kind. Air returns past a sensor that senses gently, measuring humidity that rises from millions of pores on leaves. In those pores, tiny doors called stomata are sliding to a set point. They open to drink in the simple gas that leaves love to turn into sugar, a basic carbon story that has been practiced for billions of years. They close a little if the air becomes too dry, and then open again when the breath of the room feeds them. The tower feeds a measured breeze of extra carbon dioxide, only a little more than the air outside, and it feels to the plants like a slightly richer soup, thickened just right. They do not hurry through it. They simply use it with grace. Your hands, wrapped in soft gloves, lift a tray of seedlings no heavier than a folded towel. The tray is a grid of tiny cells, each nurturing a small green promise. In the far corner, a propagation room rests under a calm, brighter shade of pink, toward the blue side, with warmth that is slightly more pronounced, a gentle bed for beginnings. Here, the seeds have been awake for only days. They cracked a seam and sent a white tip downward, drawn by cues they cannot name, into moist, clean substrate that offers no surprise. The first leaves arch upward, thin and tender, carrying an elegant memory of the seed's shape. You cradle the tray with care, feeling the cool, rigid plastic against your palms, and place it on a waist-high shelf where mist will visit in a planned pattern, almost like the tower's version of lullabies. Each misting is short, measured in seconds, a kiss of water that leaves no pooling. You tap the edge to settle any leaning stems and move on. At the central console, a gentle screen glows. It shows graphs that rise and fall like rolling hills. Temperature shifts with a daily rhythm, not dramatic, just a soft wave. Humidity pulses between two comfortable numbers as cycles of mist and transpiration layer and blend. The water reservoir hums at a set point that holds dissolved nutrients steady. There is no alarm. There is no need to rush. You touch the screen lightly it answers with a muffled tone, as if you were speaking to a pillow. A small handheld meter sits nearby, and you lift it, swirl its probe in a beaker of water, and pause while it thinks in silence. The number settles, and you feel the quiet satisfaction of a value where it should be, as if a picture frame on a wall had righted itself. You rinse the probe with clean water and place it back in its cradle, letting the last droplets slide off its smooth shaft. A notebook waits, and you write with a calm hand, the ink laying down neat lines that look like rows of vines. Under the racks, the floors are immaculate, a matte finish that reflects only a soft glow. Each drain is set flush, each with a gentle slope leading to it like a path through a meadow. The millions of droplets that do not land exactly as planned still return along these paths, guided without urgency. You kneel and run your gloved fingertips along a pipe, feeling for vibration. The pipe is a quiet artery. You follow it to a place where a clear, cylindrical filter sits. The filter holds a faint swirl of tiny particles, too small to see when still. You twist the housing, easing the ring like a jar lid, and lift out the cartridge that caught what did not belong. It weighs almost nothing, and water gleams on its edges. You place a fresh one, seat it gently, and twist back to snugness. There is a pleasure in the simple seal, in the arrow that lines up with the mark. At one station, foggers rest inside a small chamber that looks like a miniature stage set. You open the door, and a small cloud, sweet and damp, unfurls and fades in a moment. The nozzles are tiny discs with pinholes that coax water into float. You unscrew one, hold it under magnification, and see the little opening like a star. A soft bath in warm, clean water and a delicate brush restore it, and it returns to the line like a bead on a thread. In the background, pumps exhale and inhale. A relief valve hums a contented note as it lets the pressure rest at the chosen level. You listen a long moment and then continue, moving slowly, patient as the air. Imagine pressing your fingertips gently against a leaf. The surface is cool, and it has a subtle bloom, as if a frost of invisible, waxy crystals had formed there in a protective sheen. You do not press hard. You feel the leaf's response, a slight resistance, and then acceptance. No pest has visited here. The edges are even, the veins straight and faintly raised. The colour, a steady, untroubled green. In another tray, leaves are tinged with a soft purple along the underside, a sign of a certain pigment that collects light in a slightly different way, a flattering shawl that hugs the cells. You trace your eyes along these signs and read them, not as warnings, but as gentle sentences that say the plants are content. The gentle rhythm continues. On a cart that moves so quietly, you feel it more than hear it. Containers glide by to deliver fresh trays to the next stage. The wheels are rubber and kiss the floor. The cart stops on its own, guided by a simple line under the floor. Invisible to you, but firm to the cart's senses. It pauses at a mark and offers you a tray with a tilt. You accept. Later, it moves on, as if pulled by the room's own will. You place the tray in a space where the light is a touch stronger, a step the seedlings will take. Above, the panels turn ever so slightly brighter with the shift, a change that you feel only at the edges of your sight. The leaves answer by thickening their layers, by making new cells quietly, by laying down sugar as if setting aside folded blankets. The tower breathes. You stand by a tank as water returns, passing through a series of cleansings in a loop that echoes the neat circuits of the tower. A filter with pores too small to see strains away what should not cycle back. A chamber bathes the water in ultraviolet light, like a tiny sunrise that touches only molecules. A light that is invisible but effective, and so quick that no living thing notices beyond a soft pause. In another line, oxygen is breathed into the water by a stone that whispers. The bubbles rise like pearls, touching and separating, dissolving their air into the liquid and lifting the number that tells you roots will always have a breath, even when they are cradled in water. The tank walls are smooth and cool under your palm. The surface shows very small ripples where return flow meets the wide calm. You watch the ripples until they fade and the pink light lays flat again. In a corner, near a window that is not a window but a touchscreen with a view of the outside world, a stool waits for your break. You sit and feel the support under you, the soft cushion that keeps your spine long. A bottle of water with a mild slice of lemon sits at hand. The lemon is subtle, a promise rather than a delivery, a hint of brightness that never jolts. You sip and place the bottle down with a gentle tap. In the tower, time is a steady thing, unlinked from weather and noise, kept by routines that barely shift. The tasks of your shift are simple and repetitive, and in their repetition, they become soothing. You check a light bar, its line of diodes like a string of calm stars. You note the gentle warmth along the back where heat pipes carry away what is not needed. You adjust a dimmer by a notch. You breathe. Now imagine you move to the lift that will carry you to the higher levels. The lift is modest, a platform with a rail and a small panel of buttons that glow. You press and it responds with a soft acceptance. You take hold of the rail. The platform rises with a stable, unhurried ease. As you ascend, rows slide past your field of view, bands of pink weaving and unwinding. You pass lettuces that look like ruffles on a calm pond. You see herbs standing taller, their stems holding their leaves out like open hands. You move through air that is gently cooler as you rise. The hum remains. The droplets continue. At the top, the lift settles with almost no sensation. You take one step and you are on a walkway that looks over the fields below, like a balcony in a calm, empty theatre. Above you is the ceiling of the tower, not high in a grand way, but near enough to feel shelter. Ducks wrapped in quiet insulation carry fresh air in and out. Some fold humidity into the stream just enough. Others pull heat away in a measured tide. You follow one duct to a damper, and you place your hand on the actuator. It warms your glove slightly. The damper is open just the amount needed. You listen for the flutter of fabric, a sign the flow is steady. There is no flutter, only the slow motion of air, which you can sense in the way leaves very faintly nod, a nod so small it is nearly a thought. The gentle rhythm continues. You look down for a moment and notice condensation at the base of a tube, a row of beads caught like a string of crystal. They have gathered from breath and time. One droplet swells and breaks away. In its controlled fall, it gains speed until it meets the curve of a plastic lip. It spreads in a lens and then collects again at the lower edge. Another droplet meets it, and they join, form a slightly larger drop, and then slip away, guided down to a drain. This small choreography is repeated in countless places, in corners and along lines, a slow dance of adhesion and gravity that never needs an audience. The droplets keep the tower company, always busy, never loud, across the way, in a bay for tender varieties. The light is adjusted toward the blue, and the cycle of day and night is shaped differently, favoring growth patterns that stay compact. You stand close and watch a leaf recover from a small bend, its structure springing back with a resilience that is quiet. This softness is not weakness. It is a balance, a physics of water inside a pressurized cell, woven with cellulose and pectin that give a leaf its memory of shape. You picture the tiny pumps in the root cells, moving ions into compartments, drawing water by osmosis, tension in the cell walls rising like a tide that keeps the leaf firm. It is all happening without any drama, the most patient of novels told in chemistry. You make your way to the seed storage, a cool cabinet with drawers that slide silently. Inside, packets rest, each labelled with care. They hold dry, sleeping beginnings, each one a wrapped plan, waiting for moisture and warmth to start its first tiny arithmetic. The seeds are living, but paused, like a song held between notes. You run a finger along the labels: lettuce, basil, chard, dill, shiso, thyme. Some have numbers and letters that mean the strain will stand neatly beneath these lights. Others carry names that feel old. You slide the drawer closed and listen to the soft stop as it nestles back. A calendar, more of a guiding palette than a strict schedule, tells you when each batch began and when each will move. In a place like this, time is counted in days of light and dark, in cycles of mist and stillness, in the measured growth of a leaf, from thumb-sized to palm-sized. You lift a plant from its cradle, the root mass soft and white and clean, laced like lace made by raindrops. It smells faintly of earth even though it has not lived in soil, an echo of places where its ancestors grew, a stored memory in the compounds it breathes. You replace it with a turn and hear a nearly silent click as it sits back on its support and rejoins the arc of time. Back on the main floor, a small maintenance bench holds quiet tools, a cloth, a brush with soft bristles, a bottle of clean solution that smells like a day after rain. You take a nozzle and turn it slowly between your fingers, watching the light catch on its edges. The nozzle carries tiny grooves where water is coaxed into a spiral before it exits, a movement that helps droplets disperse evenly and avoids large beads. You dip the nozzle in warm water and let it rest a moment. When you set it back, you feel how the parts line up smoothly. No force, no stress. Each thing in its place, aligned with what came before and what will come after. You drift down another aisle, and the tower shows you its different moods. In one section, leaves are lush and layered, overlapping like pages. In another, they keep space around them, a design for airflow. Each crop has a gentle preference, and the tower has learned to honour those. Some enjoy a touch cooler, some just a fraction warmer. Some spread their roots for the mist, some prefer the kiss of a trickle. Each shelf is a small world tuned to a comfortable middle. You keep your pace slow, letting your body mimic the towers. As you exhale, the air around you mixes into the broad currents that already flow, as if your breath has joined the tower's breath and can rest there. The tower's control room is not separate, but you step into a slightly more enclosed area where the panels gather. You sit in a chair that turns with a glide and adjust it until your back is held. On a screen, a gentle graph shows the light intensity, measured not in harsh units you need to memorize, but as a stream of little dots of energy per second per square meter. The dots are called photons, and in your mind, they feel like the droplets in the air, except they do not wet and do not weigh. They land on chlorophyll and give a gentle push to electrons, and the plant takes that push and uses it to rearrange molecules patiently. You can alter how many dots fall in a given time by sliding a finger or tapping a soft button. You adjust by a sliver, and somewhere a leaf feels it like a changing breeze that remains friendly. Next to this graph, a simple line tracks a gentle gas, and you nudge a dial to keep it in that slightly enriched zone. The system acknowledges in quiet green text. The gentle rhythm continues. Imagine tracing a droplet story all the way through. It begins as water that came from a purified source, cleaned until it is almost featureless. A handful of salts, carefully measured, dissolve in it and become visible as clearer reflections in the liquid. The droplet forms under pressure at a nozzle and slips into air, where its surface curves into a sphere, held by tension like a fine skin. It meets a root or a leaf or a channel. If it meets a root, it coats and then creeps into a space where hairs thinner than hair take it in. If the plant is thirsty, channels inside the root move it upward, drawn by the pull of evaporation happening at leaves. There, the droplet's water steps into air from tiny openings, invisible to you, joining the humidity of the room. If it meets a channel, it slips and adds its body to the returning stream. That stream flows to a sump and then to the filters. There it pauses, is cleaned, and returns to the tank. The droplet becomes another droplet and another droplet. These cycles are not a straight line. They are a circle. The sound of that circle is the peace in this place. In the middle of your shift, you pause. You settle your shoulders. Feel the connection between your feet and the floor, and let your gaze soften. The tower has let you in to its slow hour, and your eyes may feel heavy. How sleepy are you on a scale of 1 to 10? You continue calmly. A conveyor glides past at the speed of a patient walk, carrying greens that have reached their time to be harvested. You do not have to cut or move quickly now. For a moment, you simply watch the leaves as they move under a gentle mist that keeps them crisp without soaking. The mist's droplets are so fine, they look like breath on glass. They settle and keep the leaves cool. The conveyor's surface is clean and smooth, and the edges are rounded so nothing catches. In the near future, hands will arrive to lift the leaves into boxes, but for now, the line is content to run empty, as if practicing its steps, a rehearsal in slow motion that keeps parts true and minds calm. You return to the plants and lean closer to the smell of basil. Even in this controlled world, it feels like a garden after a warm afternoon, a scent that moves through memories as much as air. You consider the way this aroma is made. Tiny oil containing cells, scattered like punctuation among the cells of leaves. Tiny bags of complex molecules that plants make for their own reasons, some to call allies, some to keep nibblers away. Here, the purpose is less important than the presence. The scent lifts and fades, rises and falls with the airflow, and drifts back to a whisper. The lettuce near it has an aroma almost not there, as though it is cool water-made leaf. When you taste later, it will be crisp like a quiet bite of snow. But for now, you just breathe it in and let it pass. Between the rows, a faint checkerboard of light and shadow plays on the floor where structural beams sit closer to the LEDs. It is not a harsh pattern. It shifts gently as the air flows, as droplets refract and reflect the light like tiny shifting lenses. Look at a leaf margin and you see a line of perfect curves, scalloped like a soft wave. On the day's schedule, a brief shadow period is set to come in a while, a pause in light small enough that the plants do not mind. The pause helps their cells breathe out some of what they stored, a rhythm that keeps everything balanced. It is a little like lowering your eyelids for a short rest without falling asleep. You step to the side and watch a worker, or perhaps it is you yourself, adjusting a headlamp that is not bright, only a helpful companion so that you can see where your fingers go. The lamp's tone is chosen to avoid confusing the plants, a soft hue that appears white to you but sits in a place that leaves ignore. You lift a cluster of tubes and check the seals. The fittings seat snugly. The lines are labelled in soft colours, simple codes that mean you can tell at a glance where each loop goes. One line says east, another says tower inner, another says propagation. The labels are clean, not peeling, sticking as if they were placed only yesterday. Although you know they have endured many patient days, you walk with an easy, measured cadence to a panel mounted at a comfortable height. It shows values in ranges that do not jump. These are not numbers that will ever shout. They speak in intervals, quiet and broad. If something moves toward an edge, the system nudges it back with a soft correction. In your shift, the only change you choose is to adjust the humidity slightly downward as the leaves grow thicker and transpire less. You turn a small knob by a third of a turn, and the dehumidifier purrs a bit more deeply. The air grows a fraction drier. A many-armed spiral of feedback starts and ends with the simplest reality: leaves losing water to air until balance returns. Sensors continue to collect the tower's details. Under your shoes, the floor is warm just enough to keep condensation from resting there. This warmth helps droplets feel that drains are inviting, so they move in that direction. A timer clicks, almost too softly to notice, then stops, then moves again in a pattern that repeats every few minutes. The clicks divide time into pieces that are easier to hold. You rub your fingertips together and they feel clean. The air on your skin is so smooth that you barely notice it. Your ears hear a distant, continuous tone that changes very slightly as pump speed adjusts. Your eyes rest in the pink tone as though it were a blanket. The gentle rhythm continues. From a higher walkway, you watch the overall geometry of the tower. Its inside is a set of repeating modules, an elegant grid. The grid is not severe. It has curves where needed and gentle edges where possible. The stack of levels sits around a core where utilities rise. A trunk with cables and pipes arranged in careful parallels. The way it all is built suggests a quiet mind that planned it, a mind that has learned how to encourage living things without pushing. The tower is not a factory. It is a garden with rails and fans, a greenhouse that forgot it needed the sun to rise and learned to provide it in place, at a tempo it could keep. If you listen closely, you can hear a separate layer of sound. The leaves themselves rustle at a scale so small it is more like a texture of silence. Their own small movements as water shifts from one cell to another, and veins carry sugar from leaf to stem to root. You cannot really hear this, but standing here, smelling the light spice of thyme and the mint of basil, seeing the haze of droplets drift and combine, you can almost imagine this extra layer is real. The imagining is enough. The tower does not mind whether you hear or only feel. On the wall nearby, a small frame print of a leaf's underside hangs. It shows rows of tiny mouths, just dots at this scale, edges slightly raised. You feel a tender respect for the way these mouths open when the air is gentle and close when the air dries. The tower arranges the air to keep those mouths in a good mood. Fans whisper, pumps hum, droplets begin and end and begin again. The gentle rhythm continues. You check the backup power system. It is not dramatic. It is a tidy set of batteries with status lights that glow softly, green and content. A test button asks for a small press, and you give it one. The system transfers smoothly, with no flicker, from native power to stored. You imagine a night with winds and clouds outside, and inside, the tower would never notice. You press again, and it returns. The batteries keep their charge and thank you in their quiet way. You note the result in your notebook, the tip of your pen making soft hushing sounds as it moves. Another part of your shift invites a simple, repeated task. A set of small coloured clips mark where pruning must be done to keep air moving around leaves. You slide a clip off a stem and it releases without catching. You never pull or tear. You hold the stem near its base and let your secured fingers press and twist gently. The leaf flutters and then comes free. It is not wasted. It rests on a tray that will carry it where it will be turned into a mild tea for the compost system that feeds a different part of the building. A separate loop that never intrudes on your clean, running water loop. The compost breathes in its own chamber, and the warmth it gives is captured and used to temper the air in your tower. Even unused leaves become part of the equilibrium, their own story continuing in quiet ways. At a hand-washing sink with touchless controls, warm water flows in a sheet. The water feels silkier than usual because it has been softened just enough to keep the tower's filters happy. The soap is unscented and friendly to the skin, and its foam rises and falls like a small cloud. You rinse, shake, and watch the droplets fly and glint, then collect again on the surface. Towels are fabric, washed and returned, so no paper rustles and nothing feels wasteful. You dry your hands and pull on a fresh pair of gloves. The gloves feel like new leaves on your hands. You study a label stamped on the side of a panel that quietly notes the light's intensity. You remember that these numbers mean a certain rate of photons, and you think of all the times in the natural world when leaves have had to adapt to shadows or high, bright transparency. Here, that adaptation is not a stress, it is practice. The tower places more or fewer dots gently. The leaves respond and return to their tasks. You see a small difference in colour from one shelf to another and know the oldest leaves have a slightly deeper tone because they hold more pigments that age with dignity. You nod as if the plants could see. You have a simple snack, a small slice of something bland and kind, perhaps a piece of fruit that is not too sweet. It tastes like an ordinary moment and your body appreciates it. Your stomach feels content and quiet. You sip water. You set the bottle down. Through the long middle of your shift, everything seems to repeat in the best way. You check, you tidy, you nudge. The tower breathes. It glows. It lets water fall and rise. Outside, the world could be busy or asleep, but inside, it is always the same, not because it is unchanging, but because it changes at the soft scale of leaves. The gentle rhythm continues. Now you wander to the small room where the seedlings germinate. The light here is dimmer, a gentle pre-dawn compared to the rest. A thin fog rests near the surfaces, kept warm by a steady warmth under the trays. You lift the lid of a germination dome, and the mist slips away like a quiet sigh. Each cell in the tray has a small bit of substrate, uniform and calm. Tiny seeds, some no larger than a speck of dust, have pushed out a root. The root is white and so tender you would not want to touch it. You do not. You simply observe. The number of days since sowing is marked in neat writing. A fine spray bottle sits at the ready should the surface look dry, but it does not, because the room kept its promise to stay moist and warm. You close the lid and watch a film of water pull across the surface of the plastic, then break gently into clear beads. Back among the greens, you notice the slight gradient of colour, from the deeper hue near the centre of the head to the lighter edges. The gradient tells a soft story about light and age, not of deficiency. You check leaves for any signs of mineral imbalance. Edges are smooth, no speckles, no outlines of worry. You feel the contentment of a system in balance. If ever a correction were needed, it would be a dribble of something into the mixing tank, a teaspoon measure to nudge the numbers back to where they feel best. Today, there is no need. The tank's surface reflects stillness. A few steps away, you observe the way different crops share space. Leafy greens like to be close, but not touching when full grown. Herbs like a bit of air around them. Microgreens like to huddle when young, and then, after a few days, stand like a crowd at a quiet station. The tower respects these personal distances. Dividers slide easily to change the shelf from one to another. Hooks and rails rearrange without fuss. A whole architecture of small adjustments makes the tower feel like a place that responds to gentle intention rather than demands it. You lean on the rail of the mezzanine and trace the curves of the irrigation system with your eyes. A main line rises, splits, and splits again, and each split is made with 2 clean elbows and 1 straight piece, not because that is the only way, but because it is satisfying. Flow meters turn with small paddles, each rotating at a rate that whispers the volume gently. The paddles are enclosed, protected from oversight and dust, turning like clocks that never need winding. The little numbers that appear on the small screens are content numbers, not extreme. You watch them a moment longer than necessary, because watching them feels like listening to a familiar song. On a small shelf, an instrument rests that measures the push of ions. You lift its probe and dip it into a sample of the nutrient solution. The instrument needs a second to settle, like a body sinking into a bath. The number stabilizes, and you see it is exactly within the narrow range that leaves prefer, neither too strong nor too dilute. You swirl it gently and set it down. A second instrument, one that measures how acidic or not the water is, sits next to it. You check. You see numbers that match the quiet profile you expect, and you return to the motion of your shift without pause. The gentle rhythm continues. Nearby, a panel opens with a simple latch. Behind it, wires are neatly organized, each with a colored sleeve, each anchored with a small clip. There are no loose ends. There is a left to right order, a logic the eyes can rest on and read without effort. Behind this order, electricity flows not wildly, but as if walking along a path under a canopy, content to arrive and then rest, and then continue again in loops that never fray. You close the panel, and the latch clicks like a soft punctuation mark. In a far corner, a plant reaches a bit toward the aisle, its leaves slightly larger than the others, a shape that suggests it is very happy. You run a finger along its edge, and you can feel a faint tooth pattern, so subtle it is more suggestion than form. The leaf rests back. You feel grateful it grows in a place where rain is made, light is laid down, and air is arranged. It tells you with its body that it is comfortable. You feel comfortable too, aligned with the logic of the room. The tower operates as a gentle concert between physics and biology. Gravity carries droplets to where they belong, and then to where they become part of a cycle again. Surface tension holds shapes and then releases them as the balance tips. The air, warmed a little near the lights, rises and is guided to flow where leaves need it most. The fans do not fight this. They accompany it. The plants bring water from root to leaf, and as they open tiny mouths to let water go, they draw up more from below, sending a measured stream through themselves that carries dissolved nutrients to the far corners of their body. Each of these processes has numbers behind it, but you do not need to hold them in your mind. You are content to hold the picture of their quiet cooperation. As the shift progresses, you visit the space where packages are prepared, boxes that will carry greens out into the world. The boxes are assembled with a calming repetition, folding, tucking, sealing. The material has a clean sound as it bends, not a crack, but a soft give. There is no tape to struggle with. The folds hold. On the front, a label is printed with a simple font about where these leaves came from. You read your tower's name and smile. The letters look even under the pink light, an easy sign that this moment is part of the same gentle rhythm. You set the boxes aside and return to the streams and rows. The tower includes small sanctuaries for workers, and you use one now. The room is quiet and dim, with seating that supports and a short place to stretch. You lie on your back for a moment and watch the faint pink light that sneaks under the door. You feel your muscles lengthen and soften. There is a rolling stool that slides with almost no resistance, and as you push it gently, it glides to a stop and gently rocks once, then becomes still like your breath. You sit up, drink water, and exhale in a long, soft line that seems to merge with the humming in the air outside. You stand and return to the plants, feeling your step become even more unhurried. Back in the aisles, the mist visits again, timed by a clock that is loyal to the plan you set. The sound of it is a hush, almost like the silence of snow falling. The droplets expand the scent of green just slightly, then let it settle again. The leaves shine for a moment and then become matte as water spreads evenly and the surface tension does its quiet work. Macroscopic patterns appear, arcs of condensation along a curved leaf, tiny veins that run like rivers in a plain. The patterns do not last. They move and shift as the droplets change shape and place. You watch, you breathe, you move on. You pause at a table with reference cards. They show images of leaves that were too pale or too dark, edges that curled or margins that burned. You are reassured that the leaves in your tower do not look like these today. You turn the cards over, and on the back are remedies that are small and careful, not sweeping changes that would shock the system. It pleases you that even the fixes follow the tower's ethos of gentle adjustments. You return the cards to their place, aligned edges, squared corners. The tower's supply room holds the materials that keep things moving, extra twisting connectors, seals that will be needed someday, clean lines coiled like sleeping snakes, all with tags that state their sizes and uses. You run your hand along a row and feel the cool of plastic and the mild warmth of the room's air. No item is stored in a way that feels crammed. Everything has a little space around it, as if the storage itself were a form of cleanliness. The lights are dim here, so the materials keep their best properties for longer. A faint hum from a small dehumidifier keeps the air steady. You take what you need and leave the room with the simple satisfaction that you have everything to make small fixes at hand. Once more, you adjust a dimmer at a panel and notice a drift of small dust motes in the air, illuminated by the change. The dust in this tower is not the dust of busy streets or untended floors. It is a fine, almost imaginary presence, captured by filters long before it can settle on leaves. It seems to twinkle and then disappear as the light stabilizes. You watch this small show and then return to your task. The gentle rhythm continues. Your eyes drift to a leaf where a droplet sits at the very edge, held there by a push of water from within the plant. This is not the mist. This is a small droplet that the plant has exhaled at the edge of its leaf remnant, a sign that the plant has more water than it needs at this moment, pushing it through tiny pores at the edges. The droplet collects minerals, and when it dries, it will leave a faint mark like a memory. This is a normal thing, a small, natural trace. You have learned to see it and not worry. You let it be. You glance up and notice a clock on a pillar that does not tick. Its hands move in a flow. The clock shows that your shift is moving forward at the same speed it always has, and you feel the odd sense that time is both passing and resting at once. You move to the end of an aisle and look back the length of it and see the lines converge to a vanishing point that sits quietly at the far edge of your vision. The geometry and the light make you feel held and oriented. A gentle beeping begins, and ends almost immediately to let you know the storage tank is full and the return has begun again. You picture the water cycling down, along, up, through, and back. You can lay this path in your mind like a ribbon that loops. As you imagine it, you feel your mind wrap around the loop, and that feeling is restful. You walk beside it as it runs hidden behind panels. The gentle rhythm continues. After visiting the upper levels again, you reach a small alcove where materials for sanitizing rest. A sprayer with a mild solution that smells faintly like clean, sunlit rooms waits. Its nozzle gently coats surfaces when needed. Today, there is little to sanitize because everything was wiped recently. You spray a handle and wipe, and the cloth glides smoothly as if the surface were made of water. You pause to let it dry, watching for a moment as the thin film disappears into air. You place the cloth in a bin where it will be washed and used again. Nothing in this tower feels disposable. Everything feels part of a cycle that holds. Near the door to the control room, there is a panel with small windows that show the outside world, not in live video, but as an abstraction, a gentle twilight that shifts hue over hours based on the time beyond. This is for the workers, so they do not entirely lose the sense of day and night. The pink of the tower does not ask the same of humans as it asks of plants. You glance at the panel and see a slow darkening into night. It comforts you to know that outside, stars might be peering down, and inside, droplets are falling in their protected sky. You return to another round of checks. You look for leaks. There are none. You look for leaves that might be shading others too much. There are a few. You adjust them. Each adjustment is simple, similar to the last. A series of small acts that add up to a well-tended living structure. A smooth medley of sensors tracks subtle changes, and your hands take care of the larger picture. Everything fits into a pattern that you can follow without effort, even as your thoughts begin to float. The gentle creak of a rolling ladder next to a tall row marks another tool of your shift. The ladder's wheels lock with a soft click when you press a pedal. You climb a few steps, touch the rail, and feel the coolness of the metal. The steps grip your shoes without abrasiveness. You reach, adjust a nozzle, and climb down. You press the pedal again. The ladder is free. It glides an inch and then rests. The sound it makes as it moves is a friendly little music, only heard when you attend to it. You pause near a crop that is nearing harvest. Its leaves dense and overlapping like a green bouquet. You lift one leaf and peek into the center. Fresh, pale greens fold tight, protected by the outer layers. It feels like a secret at the heart of a familiar thing. You lower the leaf and let it return to its place. You look at a basil stem and notice the first signs of a flower cluster forming. You pinch it softly, using a technique that causes minimal stress, and the plant's energy will go back into leaves. This is not unkind. It is an old understanding between grower and plant in such a place. The basil seems to respond by smelling even more alive, as if it has sighed and returned to its favourite task. You stroll by a tray of microgreens. They are small but vibrant, with stems that capture the light and leaves that look like tiny hearts. Their density makes a soft whispering sound when the air moves past the most subtle of shivers. A gentle hand passes over the tops to encourage strong stems. They bounce back with grace. Later, these simple motions will add up to greens that feel crisp on the tongue. For now, they are just moving in the air like grasses in a mild wind, a miniature prairie under a pink sky. In a quiet corner, the tower stores small vials of trace elements, concentrated and sealed. The labels are precise and the caps are tight. Occasionally, a few milliliters will be measured and diluted into the main tank, almost like adding seasoning to a stew. You recall that too much seasoning would spoil it, and too little would leave it dull. You appreciate that this balancing act rewards patience. The tower is not fed by guesses, but by careful repetition, and that repetition has taught your hands what to do, not as rules, but as habits. Your mind drifts to the billions of tiny chloroplasts in the leaves around you, and how each one is busy in a slow way, capturing light and turning it into molecules that can be used later when light is gone. It is an economy as quiet as breathing in your sleep. The molecules move along veins, into storage, into building hairline strands of sugars that the plant can stitch into more of itself. You imagine the leaves sighing in time with the pumps. The gentle rhythm continues. You check the door seals. You run your fingers along their smooth weather stripping and feel no gaps. This keeps the pressure difference slight and useful, maintaining a flow outward at the edges so that anything that might try to drift in is gently turned away. The door opens with a sigh and closes with a hush. Each time, the air exchange is noted and adjusted for, not because the system is fussy, but because it is attentive. You appreciate this attentiveness because it matches your own steady presence. Back at the central station, you look at the log of the day's small changes. Entries sit in a calm column, light up a notch at 9, humidity down gently after midday cycle, a nozzle cleaned at aisle 3, filter replaced at return line east. Each line is a small stone that lines a path. Together, they feel like a walk through a familiar garden that you love without needing to say so. You step to the lower levels again and observe seedlings that have grown since the start of your shift. Perhaps imperceptibly, perhaps only in your mind's sense of time compressing into comfort. Still, the idea pleases you. You imagine that every breath of the tower has helped a leaf expand by a molecule's width. It might not be literally true at this moment, and yet it feels right. You allow yourself this gentle story and move on. In a room at the base of the tower, a water purification unit sits. It is modest but effective, passing the source water through membranes that keep out what is not needed and letting through sleeping simplicity. It hums and rests, something like a household appliance, but more precise, more constant. A small gauge shows you a gentle pressure difference across the membrane, not too large. You check it, wrap your knuckles lightly against the housing, and the sound is solid. You step away, knowing this part of the tower is content. Fields of shelves and plants might suggest complexity, but everything is broken down into small cycles that you can hold gently in your attention. There is a cycle of light, a cycle of air, a cycle of water, a cycle of nutrient mixing, a cycle of cleaning, a cycle of human movement and rest. Each cycle overlaps with others, like rings on a pond made by raindrops, and where they intersect, you feel something like meaning. You let your gaze go soft again and choose a plant to focus on. You follow its edges, its veins, the way it catches the pink light on the curve and lets it slide off where the blade flattens. Your eyes become heavy, your shoulders slacken. You let your mind float like a leaf in a gentle current. Toward the end of your shift, you take a final slow walk. You look back at the seedlings, the adolescents, the nearly ready, the few to be harvested. You listen for anything that breaks the smoothness of the sound. There is nothing. You place a hand on a fixture, and the steady vibrations pass through your glove, up into your arm, into your muscles, into your bones. You feel aligned with the tower, as if you are part of its structure for a few breaths. You stand by the door. Somewhere beyond, the outside world changes colour, but in here, the pink sky remains even. You unglove at a bench, wash your hands, and dry them with a soft cloth. You remove the cap, and your hair slips back into the light. You hang your coat, and your gloves go into a bin to be cleaned. Your shoes tread the mat one last time, each step releasing a faint breath of filtered air. You turn and look back down the aisle, at the soft repeating forms, the layers upon layers, and you feel a calm that is not theatrical, not grand, but gentle and true. The tower will hold its quiet until you return. The pumps will hum, the fans will whisper, and the light will lay down the soft pink that keeps leaf and stem and root company. The millions of droplets will continue their delicate work, joining, falling, returning, and becoming again, a soft rain that never leaves a cloud, a cycle that is a lullaby for living things. You step out, and the door sighs closed. You are back where clocks tick and stars ignore buildings, and you carry with you the gentlest version of the tower's rhythm, like a breathing you can keep. As you return to your own evening, imagine yourself resting with the same calm cycles inside, breath staying easy, thoughts drifting like mist, and sleep arriving the way a droplet joins a pool with no ripple. You are safe, you are held, and your mind can settle into the simple patterns of quiet light and quiet water. Thank you for spending this soft shift with me. If this peaceful visit helped you wind down, please subscribe and leave a like, so we can keep bringing you these gentle stories as often as you need them. Rest well and let the steady pink light and the hush of millions of droplets guide you into a deep, unhurried sleep.